Hello and welcome to another episode of Mono Story. Today we'll be talking about something that I believe to be again controversial in the One Piece space, and that is whether Ace's death was necessary for the story. Now before we talk about whether or not it was important, we need to discuss who this character is. If you're a One Piece fan or you've been watching One Piece for a very long time, you'll know, but for some people, maybe they caught up later, they haven't seen previous parts, or maybe they've forgotten because he's been gone for so long. Ace was the son of Gol D. Roger, the person who hid all the treasure. You know, the One Piece, right? So he had a son, which was named Legazpi Ace. And so he then was half-brothers with Luffy and Sabo, and at the time they all lived together. And so as Ace got older, he left the island that they were on and went out and searched for obviously the One Piece and the Grand Line and everything like that. So he eventually got a crew together, but was slaughtered by Whitebeard and his crew, and Whitebeard accepted him as a son, even though Gol D. Roger and Whitebeard were enemies at the time, or before. So now we get to our story where Ace is a part of the Whitebeard pirates, and his pirate crewmates was murdered by Marshall D. Teach, also known as Blackbeard. And so now Ace was on a hunt to avenge his crewmate who was murdered by Blackbeard for the devil fruit, which gave him the yummy yummy nomi. Okay, the dark powers that he has now. Okay, so he loses his fight to Blackbeard and is then captured by Blackbeard and then taken to the Marines, and he is put on trial for his actions, and he is to be murdered like Gol D. Roger, as he is the son of Gol D. Roger. And so the story then picks up to where Luffy goes and tries to rescue him, and we go through all of these things we go through Impel Down, this highly secure facility that very few people can break into, and not only does he break in, he rescues a lot of other pirates from there as well. And we also then see him at Marineford after that, having this big battle to save Ace with the Whitebeard pirates, and we see Whitebeard using his devil fruit, the Gura no Mi, and he creates what looks like to be earthquakes, and we see such epic battle. And then Luffy saves him. They break him out of his chains, and Luffy and Ace are fighting, and it's getting crazy. And then Luffy, has the Viva card, and he starts, oh look, it's Ace's Viva card. And then all of a sudden we see Ace try to protect Luffy, because the person he's fighting, Akainu, sees his weakness and goes after Luffy, and Ace stands in the way of it and gets literally donutted. So he was not going to survive that. There was no way. And so now that we know where our character came from, what he was, and how he died, we can now ask the question, was it a necessary death? As we know, Oda has a good history of playing with death in a weird way, where he will kill off some characters but miraculously let others live. So we always know our Pell situation from Alabasta Arc. Everyone knows that. It's one of the most controversial and the most well-known situations where Pell takes a bomb up in the air and then just somehow lives. He's somehow in another chapter in the anime, he just shows back up at the door. Like, okay bro, you do your thing. And so, now getting back to our main topic, is Ace's death necessary? As a death is required to show character development. So generally a character will die for another character to become better or improve, or some form like that. as before they were showing either weakness or laziness or lack of judgment. And so in this case, you reflect on it at that moment, you would say, yes, 100% he should have died there. But then you think about it, because so many things have happened now, and we could say, well, did he need to die? We already had a death. Whitebeard died. So Whitebeard's death was a very good marker for at least Ace and for Luffy to realize that, war and fighting, there is death involved. Because up to that point, we haven't really seen much death around Luffy's team or crew, right? So we can make the argument that the death was already there for Whitebeard, and Blackbeard taking his power was also another added fear to Luffy to realize that, look, there's an enemy now that's twice as strong as before. And so, did we really need Ace to die there? Look, that's a good question, and I'd say again, no. Now I think about it, he shouldn't have died. He should have lost a limb. He should have maybe been in a way where he would have a scar of some sort, like Luffy has on his chest. Could have been enough. But something would have given him that drive. And instead of now Luffy having to fight Akainu, we would have had Ace fighting Akainu. Now the issue we have with that, if Ace never died under technicality, is how did Sabo get the Mera Mera no Mi? Now, right, so because if Ace is still alive, how can Sabo have it? So now we'd have Sabo being weaker. So I think with that, if they'd killed off, let's say, Marco could have died. Again, it's a very tough situation, but Marco would have died. Most of the crew would have been stricken with grief, and that fruit could then be at Dressrosa. And so, instead of Marco being on the island at the time, it would have been Ace. Ace would have come to Wano, and so then Ace and Luffy would have made up again like that. And as well, Sabo would have had that Devil Fruit, which means that then Ace and Sabo's attack would have been twice as strong with double flame powers. Okay? So that would have been pretty cool. And the second problem we have is Sabo remembering who Ace and Luffy were, because it was only after Ace's death that Sabo remembered that who Luffy was and so Ace was. So I think that could have been done better, because there still would have been reports of Ace being freed, and Sabo would have remembered from that, and he would have been, instead of crying with sadness, crying with joy for that situation, because now he'd realize, oh, my brothers are still alive and I remember who they are. And he would have met up with them at some point. Dressrosa would have been clear, and at that point he would have got the new fruits. Then there'd be double Mera Mera no Mi and the Devil Fruit of what Marco had. He has the Tori Tori no Mi model Phoenix, so I believe that would have been a better Devil Fruit, and that would have been awesome. Now unfortunately Marco would be dead, but I think we can make the trade-off, considering we didn't really have a good inclination to who Marco was. And instead we would have had Ace. Ace would have been still around, and we would have an awesome fight in Wano. Maybe we would have had an awesome fight in Egghead, because Ace could have stayed with Luffy after that. He could have come to Egghead. He could have gone up in Elbaf, And so this sort of, I think, was a bad choice by Oda. But again, he had the choice. It's his story. He can write it however he wants. But I think he should have lived. It would have been awesome to see Ace, Sabo, and Luffy all fighting together, and we're just never going to get that now, because Ace is dead, because he got donated by Akainu, and now someone has to kill Akainu that isn't Ace, so that revenge will have to come from Sabo, maybe, and Sabo can only go off the memory of Ace. Like he'd probably say, like, I have to kill you for my brother who I lost, and so that kind of hurts the point, when if Ace was there, he'd be like, I have to kill you for killing my captain and taking his first mate, or like another one of my crewmates, and stuff like that. So really, ending the episode here, I'd say yes, Ace shouldn't have died, and at the end of the day, well, that's how a story goes. Sometimes we want things to happen and sometimes we just don't, but at the end of the day, we're only readers. We only can make assumptions and make judgments and understand what's happened after the fact. So, well, that's it, I guess, for today, and there'll be another Monostoria. Could you please like and subscribe and press the bell button, and I'll see you on another Mono Story.